So I just need to admit everyone. Good. So I hope you guys have enjoyed doing your personal portfolio and uploaded on AWS EC2 and able to share that with other people. So the intent was to bring EC2 as a service to all of you and play around a little bit so that you know what is basic AWS services and how can you use them. So in that intro lab, you installed a personal page on Apache, which is running on EC2 instance in AWS. And then you opened up the security groups for, okay, probably Krishal is saying that he faced the same issue as Hadwani faced. So okay, we will look at that issue. I'm sure you guys have been missing something. So we will look at that. It doesn't seem like a very generic issue. It would be something like permissioning, or your file is not in the right folder, or it has no access, something like that. We will check that. Once either Krishal, you are ready, or Advani is ready with your AWS setups, which you can share here. So what we did was we play around EC2. We also get to know security groups, and we also get to know how to install Apache and do stuff. So moving on from the bootcamp week 1, where we talk about EC2, the very natural progression is to know about certain other services which I envisioned to talk to you about, and then put all of them together and create a lab and give you another mini project which you will take on for this week. So basically, in this session, we will cover S3, which is a storage service from AWS. Just like your Google Drive, S3 can store objects. S3 is available over internet, and you can use S3 to store anything. And in this lab, which I'm going to talk about this week, in this lab, we will move our personal portfolio page, which we designed on EC2, to S3. So instead of hosting that personal page on EC2, you will now host that on S3. And then I will talk about one more service, which is called CloudFront. CloudFront is kind of a content delivery network. If you have not heard much about CDNs, don't worry. I want to introduce that to you so that you get more aware. So I'm going to talk about CDN and CloudFront because in our lab, we will integrate CloudFront with S3. so that you can host your static website on S3 and uh, access it through CloudFront in the browser. And then I'm going to talk about another service. It's called KMS. It's called Key Management Service. So I want to bring a little bit of security into the mix and introduce certain services which under the hood do a lot of things, but you won't be able to know about them because they're not used on day-to-day basis. So basically, I'm going to talk about the security of the data which you um, upload on S3. In this case, your personal page. So how that data is stored on S3, whether it is encrypted or not. Because if someone can access your data, it's a problem. And if that person is able to access the data, fine. At least they cannot read it because it's encrypted. So by default, when you talk about S3 and you work in a enterprise or any company, it will always be encrypted in some manner. So when you encrypt that data on S3, you use a key. Um, so basically, you tell S3 to use a key to encrypt all the data which we are uploading. And that key is stored or managed in another service called KMS. So in this today's lab or today's session, we will talk about how to upload a file on S3, what is CDN, and what is CloudFront, how to integrate CloudFront with S3 so that you can give access to your users about your file. And we will access your personal page through a URL, which will be coming through CloudFront. And then we will also look at the mechanism to encrypt the data on S3. So without going into too much into things about theoretical knowledge on what is S3 and all, let's actually start building it. And we will explain the concepts as we build it. So right now, if you see, you're seeing a screen which is having like 9 steps. So these 9 steps are your basically this week's assignment, or this is what you will be doing. And while doing that, you will be learning about S3 and a bit of security on S3 about the data you are storing there. And you will host your personal page again on S3, and you will make it available to anyone you want. And then you will switch off the EC2 instance where you already running the personal page. So we will basically switch from EC2 to S3 now. So we'll be following 10 steps. First, we will create a bucket. Bucket is basically, if you go to S3, Amazon S3, to store your data, you first need to create a bucket. And basically, you will use that bucket. It's like a folder. It's like a parent directory. It's like a root directory, which I'll show you. I'll create it. So you'll create a bucket. Then we will make it private so that not everyone can access it. Then we will upload our personal page on it. Then we will encrypt that personal data. Then we will create a distribution. Like distribution is now you put up your file in S3 bucket, you locked it. How can anyone access it? So we will be creating a CDN, which will act like a front end. It's like a cache, which is basically done to speed up the process of serving the static data. So this CDN will get the file from S3 and serve it to the browser. And that's how you will expose your personal page to the other users. Then we will create a new KMS key. Instead of using default S3 key to encrypt the data, we will actually create a new key. And then we will tell S3 that use this new key instead of using your key to encrypt my data. So in that manner, now you will learn how to create keys in KMS and how to tell S3 or any other service to use your keys rather than using a default key. The keys are keys. If they are stolen, then most of the attacks or most of the hacks in today's world happen because the keys are stolen. So if someone has your key, and that key can be key to encrypt data on S3, or key to connect with your database, or key to connect with your secrets manager and get some kind of secrets. So keys are important. Most of the times when attacks happen on an enterprise, it's mostly because those keys are compromised. So we will do a kind of another best practice. We'll create our key and tell S3, use this key instead of using your own key. Then this time we will add a little bit of debugging into our building process. And I will introduce you to another service which is called CloudTrail. The CloudTrail is a service which is basically takes care of all kinds of logging activities happening in your AWS account. So basically, I will ask you to search for events and logs where it says that we have changed the default S3 key to this new KMS key we created. So that would be a little, interesting thing for you to try out, and you will get to know about CloudTrail. So let's move on, and let me start showing you how to do things instead of talking about it. So if anyone has any questions at this point of time, please tell me. I am going to log into my my AWS console. Uh, if you can see my screen, um, that's great. But if you are not able to see my screen, um, I want you to tell me that. Let me mute uh, our chat. Awesome. Great. So I hope you can see my AWS console, right? Uh, um, hope you guys can see my AWS console. Okay. If you can see my AWS console, I am using um, my management account. I am in US East 1 region. And then I am going to go to a service called S3. So this is S3. In S3, if you see the dashboard on the left-hand side, there is something called buckets. Um, some other things which let's not worry about them at this point of time. Let's only take care of the buckets part and go one by one. So what we will do here is let's create a bucket. We are creating a bucket so that we can put our personal page in this bucket. Um, it's a general purpose bucket. And I'll name this bucket as AWS Bootcamp Week2 bucket. You can follow whatever you want to follow. Then when I go down, there is something called ACLs disabled. All objects in this bucket are owned by this account. Access to this bucket and its object is specified using only policies. So basically, access control lists are, as their name suggests, they can control the access to the objects stored in the bucket. Of course, we need to control the access to our files. We don't want my personal page to be administered by someone else. I want this person to see the page, but I don't want this person to, just edit it. So I don't want anyone to give access to this object, um, which can make this person edit my data. So I will start with, if you see, there is something called block public access setting for this bucket. And it says block all public access. So if you read through it, it'll tell you how an object within an S3 bucket can be made public and how you can just block all of that access. So basically, when you are storing data in S3 buckets, you can access that data via S3 bucket policies and IAM policies. So when you start with a new bucket, by default, you just block every public access and then work backwards in case you want to give access to your files to someone else. But we are not going to go too deep into access control because that's an advanced topic. At this point, what we do is only keep in mind that we are creating a bucket and we are blocking anyone to access the data in this bucket. So we are going to block all public access. Then there is something called bucket versioning. The versioning means, imagine you created a file on S3. Now you update it in some time. Would you like to keep the record of what was changed? Or do you want to be like, if I need to go back to history and get my file instead of what I have right now? To have that kind of functionality, you need to enable the versioning, right? Anytime you create a new version of your personal page, that new version is stored somewhere so that you can back up or restore from your older ones. So basically, versioning is that functionality which enables you to have history of your files and the provision to restore from the past. For now, I don't think we need that, right? We are just experimenting with our personal page and we are exploring S3 buckets. But in that process, we are learning. So we are knowing what is bucket versioning, but we are not gonna enable it. So going a little down, there is another very important thing which I already talked about. It's called encryption. So by default, if you don't do anything, by default, server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed key. So basically, by default, there is an encryption applied to the objects which we are uploading. But that encryption is done by the keys managed by S3. The default keys which AWS Amazon S3 maintains. As a consumer or as a customer, you don't know what those keys are. So at this point, we will leave this like that. When we move further, we will bring in a key which we will create. And we will then use option number second, server-side encryption with AWS key management service keys. So for now, let's leave it with server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed keys. I'm going to say create bucket. Okay, bucket name must start with the lowercase letter or number. Okay, so my bucket name has invalid characters. I don't know what is that invalid characters are. Okay. No, no. I won't like this. Okay, I had a space in front of the bucket name. That's why it was just not accepting that. But I'm going to say create bucket. So once I did that, my bucket was created, right? Now, let's do something more. Like, let's go into the bucket. We are in this bucket. I'm going to say, I'm going to upload a personal page, which I already have. Add files. I'm going to say upload. So my upload is succeeded. So now I have my HTML page in S3 bucket. Let's see if I can now directly access this HTML file from the browser. For that, I need to get the object URL. And if you go into this object in the bucket like this manner, you will get an object URL, which you can actually use in the browser. So if you see, my URL is basically my bucket name and then s3.amazonaws.com/personalpage.html. Imagine for EC2, what we did was we put the page there and then we accessed it through the IP address after opening up the ports. Here we just give the URL of the S3 object. Now let's see if it works or not. Of course, it didn't work, right? Why? Because we have not given, we blocked all public access. So you cannot access that page publicly. Are you guys following me? Drop me a message on chat. That would be great. Awesome. Good job. That's awesome. Okay, awesome then. Moving on. So now we deployed our personal page on S3 and it is not accessible. So in your labs, I'm going to write down the task 1, create S3 bucket. Task 1 is S3 bucket. Number 2, make sure it is, make sure all public access is blocked. Number 3, ensure you are using server-side keys, S3 keys, to encrypt your personal, your data. Number 4, upload your personal page .html on this bucket. So that's what you do. And after doing that, you will get to know that the access to this object is not there. So now another service we will look at, because we want to make sure that we can access this page in browser, right? So I'm going to talk about CloudFront. So this is a kind of a architectural diagram. Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery network service built for high performance, security, and developer convenience. So basically, I'll give you an example. The example is, imagine Instagram or any site which serves photographs. Now, this site is serving millions of photographs, millions of pics to millions of users. How they are so fast, how the pictures and videos load so fast into our devices. Basically, all the static content is cached in a thing called content delivery network. Like, for example, US East 1 have their own CDN, and Australia might have their own CDN. India might have their own CDN. So basically, if a user is in India, his pics and videos will be cached in the CDN of in India, so that even if this guy is traveling around, it doesn't take time to serve him his pics and videos, which are static. So they are cached in these networks, rather than all the time served via servers or the S3s. So basically, what we are going to do now is put a CloudFront in front of S3 and access S3 via this CloudFront. In that manner, what will happen is the CloudFront will cache the content or your personal page and serve you, instead of going to S3 all the times. It'll go to S3 once, then it'll fetch the object and cache it. And it will have access to S3. We will enable the access for CloudFront so that it can talk to S3 and get the file. Right? Imagine or remember what we did when we started this whole exercise, we blocked all the access to public on S3. Now we will only enable CloudFront, and only CloudFront can talk to S3 and get the file. So that is what we're going to talk and do. I'm not going to go deep into this architectural diagram. At this point, you can just understand that the CloudFront is something we are going to utilize to cache our personal page. Okay, so let's go back to our console, and this time I'm gonna say CloudFront. I have my CloudFront here. I'm gonna do create distribution, and I'm gonna say, so anytime you need to create a CloudFront access point, you need to create something called distribution. It is distribution is inherent property of this whole thing. So we're going to create a distribution whose job is to distribute your data to public, which is near to where your user is. So first thing it will ask is, see, it's a distribution network. It does not have data of its own. It will just distribute from the sources. So in this case, it is asking us, what is your origin, from where the data is originating? And it can originate from Amazon S3. And if you go down, Elastic Load Balancers, API Gateway, Media Store Container, Media Package Container, Media Package version 2 endpoint. At this point, let's only focus on S3. Because S3 is an object storage, we are storing our HTML files and maybe images, maybe videos. So we are telling Cloud Distribution Network that, go to my bucket. It's called AWS Bootcamp Week2 bucket.s3.amazon.com. It said, fine. If you want me to use this bucket, I'm going to use that. No problem. Then it will give a default name to its own self, which I feel it's fine. It's just a bucket name. And that's the name of this distribution too. Good. Then we talk about origin access. Right? Remember, we disallowed all public access. So we cannot use public option here. We're going to use number 2. Number 2 says origin access control settings. Which means bucket can restrict access to only CloudFront. This is what we want. We want only CloudFront to access the bucket and no one else. So that gives us the option. But here we need to create an origin access control. So let's create an origin access control. We will just let everything as is and we say create. Now, what it is saying is you must update the S3 bucket policy, which means that See, we remember we talk about how we need to make S3 talk to CloudFront because we blocked every access. Now, how do CloudFront will talk to it? To do that, we need to create or update the S3 policies and allow the access to CloudFront. So that's what we are going to be doing here now. That's what CloudFront is telling us. You must update the S3 policy. CloudFront will provide you with the policy statement after creating the distribution. So let's create the distribution and see what happens. Only thing I changed is the way CloudFront will access the bucket. And that's where I created a new OAC. Let's go ahead and say create, okay, web application firewall. So it is saying whether you need to enable web application firewall on CloudFront or not. Now, this is another good service and I want to talk about, but not right now. Just to give you a little bit of reference, if you have heard about denial of services attacks, DDoS attacks, the WAF or web application firewalls are used to stop those attacks. That's a security feature. In future, we will talk about it. At that time, let's say we are not enabling any security protections. I'm going to say create distribution. So now, see, successfully created. It says S3 bucket policy needs to be updated. We need to provide permissions to CloudFront to access S3. So I'm going to say copy policy. Policy is copied. I'm going to also show you how to now how to update the policy. So I went to this place. It is my bucket. And I'm going to go to permissions. And here, I'm going to copy paste. Okay. Copy policy. Oh, I'm going to edit this and I'm going to paste the policy. Now look at this policy very carefully. What it says is allow CloudFront service principal, where service is cloudfront.amazonaws.com. Action is S3 get object on resource, the bucket which we chose. It means that we are creating a policy and telling S3 that if cloudfront.amazonaws.com comes to you asking for an object or asking for a file, please give the access. One thing which you are going to be noticing here is the action part. The action part says only get object. There is no reference to put object or post object, which means you can read the file, but even the CloudFront cannot update the file or delete the file or create new files. CloudFront can only read the files from S3. This is what this policy is doing. I'm going to save the changes and I'm going to write a couple of tasks for you. Um, so now we updated the policy and we allowed CloudFront to access the data. Now let's go back to CloudFront. And test it. So if you are on the CloudFront dashboard, there is something called distribution domain name. Just copy that by clicking on that rectangular boxes and just paste that on your browser and try it out. The same thing happens. There is access denied because you need to give some object. Let's say I'm going to give personal page.html. Awesome. That works. So that is my S3, my personal page on S3. I want you, number 7 task, create a URL like above. To access your personal page.html. So that what I did is I created a personal page in S3 and connected with CloudFront and accessed it. So that's your number 7 task. By that time, you will be aware about CloudFront. Now, let's go to a key management service. Let's go to key managed. Actually, let's go to S3 and update our keys from default keys to the keys which we're gonna create now. Let's do that. So I'm going back to buckets, and my bucket is AWS Bootcamp Week 2 bucket. Now, let's see how can I edit it. Buckets. Properties, default encryption. Let's edit it. So when we created this bucket, I told you we are creating this with server-side encryption with Amazon S3 managed keys. Now I'm going to say server-side encryption with AWS key management service keys. And under this, I'm going to create a KMS key. When I say create a KMS key, I go to a service called KMS, and we are now doing customer managed keys. I want you guys to check on what is AWS managed keys versus customer managed keys. Just do some kind of little research on the difference between two. The difference primarily is AWS managed keys are managed by AWS, and the services can by default use it. You as a user has no control or visibility into it. Which is actually not bad because AWS keys are also very much secure. But sometimes the customers or enterprises where you are working, they want to control all kinds of things. So they create their own keys. And now I am doing the same thing. I'm creating a customer managed key. For me, for creating this means that I'm talking about KMS and teaching you or telling you about what this service is. It is used to, store and create and manage keys. Keys are very important when it comes to the security part of it. Every kind of encryption in database um, or in your S3 buckets are done using keys. One very important thing everyone does in commercial world, like everybody is worried about their data getting stolen. I mean, if you go through news every second day, there would be a hack um, which tells you how much data is getting compromised. Very recently, just last week, Ticketmaster, which was a popular ticketing service, uh, like 500 million records were stolen from their and from their networks. And all this happens because the keys are stolen. So, that's why you need keys. So now we are going to encrypt the data which we store in S3 using our own keys. So I'm creating a key and I'm creating a symmetric key which will be used to encrypt and decrypt both. Let's say my key is AWS Bootcamp key. I'm not giving any description. Let's say next. Who is the administrator of the key? Keys can also be administrator and used by users, the IAM users. I'll talk about IAM later on. But for now, just understand that, I'm allowing AWS Security Labs as the administrator of this key. And I also need to give the users of the key. Someone can administer and someone can use. So at this point, I'm giving the same thing as users too. Okay, so it'll tell you about like what kind of policies are created to allow the administrator and users for the key. Um, you know, at this point, you can just create it. So I have the key with me. It's called AWS Bootcamp key. I'm giving you another task which says create a customer managed key in KMS. Okay, once the key is created, I'm going to go inside the dashboard for the key. Always remember there is something called ARN. ARN is a property of almost everything in AWS. So every key has the ARN too. It's called maybe AWS resource identifier or something like that. Resource number, I don't know what is that, but it is something. It's ARN. So I'm going to copy the ARN and go to S3. S3 needs the ARN of the key, which you want S3 to use to encrypt the data. So I'm going to paste the ARN here in this box. Once that is done, I'm going to just save the changes. And now S3 is going to use this key to encrypt the data. Let's go back to CDN and see if it is still working. Yeah, it is still working. So, your number 10 task is change the default S3 key to this new KMS key. Once you do that, then I'm going to talk about another service. And this service is called CloudTrail. What is a CloudTrail? CloudTrail is AWS service, which basically logs every event which is happening on AWS services. As I talked in the previous session or lecture, that everything in AWS is a service call, web service call, web API call. So when all these API calls are happening against different services, all these calls are logged through CloudTrail, which you can go and examine. So we just recently changed the encryption key on S3 bucket, right? And we want to make sure that we can see that somewhere. So let's go to CloudTrail and find that event. So I went to CloudTrail, and right on the dashboard, there is something called event history in the bottom. And there you can see, the last event which happened was June 4th, 24, 33:57. And the event name was put bucket encryption. The event source was s3.amazonaws.com. And before that, it was a create key event, which we did, right, which was happened on KMS. So that's what you will find the put encryption and create key event in CloudTrail. So then once you are done with finding CloudTrail, last thing you should do under this lab is go to your EC2 instance, which you were running to host your site, and shut that off. So I went to EC2, I went to instances. If you see there is one instance which is running, I'm going to select that and I'm going to say stop instance, because we are not needing this instance, and we don't want to waste money on something which is not doing anything. So that was the lab. I want you to do this lab, put this personal page on S3, create the keys, create the CDNs, and do this exercise, and then shut down the EC2 instance where you put up the website last week. That was the week 2. I want you to do that in next 3 to 4 days, so that we can have another session actually this Saturday instead of going to next week. So that's what I'm thinking. And so these 12 tasks are there in the chat. Please copy them, or I will send you once I'm closing this call. But for now, this is our session. Um, if you have any questions, put that on the chat or bring them right now, right up here. Otherwise, I will put this summary and recording on WhatsApp in some hours. Do you guys follow me, or are you okay and fine with the tasks which I assigned in this section? Any questions? Anything you feel like you want to ask? You can always ask on the WhatsApp group too. But I want you all to do this exercise in next 3-4 days and tell me on WhatsApp group that you are done with it. If not, I will end this call. And I will talk to you later.
Sir, I have
Yes.
a doubt.
Yeah, please.
I have posted the doubt on the WhatsApp. Uh, it's not letting me connect to SSH client after creating an instance in the first week task.
Okay. So you are using that SSH client in the browser, or you're using it on the terminal?
Yeah, when I am like opening the instance, right, there is a connect button. When
Uh-huh.
I'm clicking that connect button, it's always trying to connect to SSH client. Then an error is showing error to establish a connection to SSH client. Always, I have tried different browsers. I have tried different instances. I have tried different regions and zones, but it's not letting me connect.
Do you have your SSH port open?
Yeah, I have. It is open.
Can we check that out? Can you show me if possible?
Yeah,
Okay,
wait.
let's do that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, the screen sharing is disabled.
Oh, sharing is disabled. Just 1 second. 1 second. Okay, now you can do that.
I have also a question. Do we have to select specific zone according to create an instance?
Zone means
Because
region.
uh, region, yes,
Yes,
that AP Southeast and that.
the thing is, wherever you uh, create the EC2, only from that region you will access it. So you can create in any region.
I have yesterday the default region was for me Stockholm, and in that I did not have that instance type to E2 micro T2 micro. I had T3 micro.
Okay.
So what is the difference between T2 and T3? Like
So
they have, yeah,
I think both of them are free, and
yeah,
the difference would be, one would have some the CPU power which is less, another might have a little more, or the RAM would be a little different. So I feel the T3 micro might have bit more of CPU power. It would be different configuration.
Yeah, I saw T3 Micro had two vCPU, two virtual CPUs,
Yeah,
and T2 had one.
yeah. So that's what it is. But I think both are free. You can use any of them.
Okay, sir, it's now letting me connect. Yesterday I tried, but it did not connect to Linux SSH client. Now it's connecting.
Cool then.
Issue solved.
Awesome. Good. Sometimes issues are very intermittent. Good.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Um, so Ayush is asking that there are two options to use keys, one to encrypt and decrypt the data using keys, and other use hash generated from MAC address. See, probably there is no comparison. Um, Sometimes there are regulations which force you to do one thing or another, and other times the convenience. So there is no preference. It all depends on the use case and the situation. Both are equally important. But we start with using keys to encrypt and decrypt the data. Awesome. Cool. Anyone else have anything to bring up?
Sir, we can this side. Previously you said just share your screen. Now I'm able to.
Okay, you want to share?
I think Apache thing and was I am not able to add my portfolio in editor.
Okay. And are you able to now?
Yes, sir. Not that thing. But I'm able to share my screen now.
Okay, please do that. Okay, so can we go into your AWS console? Uh, that's your EC2 personal page.html. Do you see there is HTTPD not running, right?
Yes, sir. Yesterday it was working. Right now I don't know what happened.
Do you have you installed Apache on it?
I followed all your steps which you have done in your lab sessions, but I don't know what all things I have to do.
Okay. Um, it seems like your service is not found at all. Um, can we install Apache once again?
Yes, sir. Just guide me what I have to do, and I will do that.
Okay. Um, Last time I had a post which shown you. Just one second. Okay, can you let me? I'm putting a command in the chat. Can you try this? Yum install -y httpd, or you want to try?
Not able to see what you write in chat.
In the chat, I pasted a command, yum install
Okay, sir. That hyphen Y.
Yeah,
Yeah, that thing I have done, and all the things have been installed. That thing is done.
try once more.
Would it be possible that you just speak it out and I will write it?
Yeah, uh, can actually it's yum space install space -y space httpd. Just wait, httpd. Just change the last line. Okay, now can you go to just go to cd var cd space
CD space.
/var, no, not where, um um var, where, yeah, that's just give that space.
After where?
After again /www /html. Okay, now can you do ls minus lrt, ls space minus lrt? Yeah, there is no okay, now here you do vi. We need to create vi space personal page.html, and here you do :I. You can put something like h1, sorry, escape :I, escape :I. Okay, now you, no, just backspace. Yeah, it's you need to write before writing escape :I.
So escape colon I.
Yeah,
Now enter.
yeah,
Mm.
escape. Yeah, now write something. Now
Uh,
escape
escape colon W.
WQ. Good. Now, do this command called system. Yeah, systemctl restart HTML. Oh, HTTPD. Yeah. Just you missed S. Just S sys.
Oh, sorry, sir.
Okay. Now try on browser.
Sir, voice not audible.
Oh, I'm saying now try on browser.
Okay, so I have to move to browser now.
Yeah. Just on the other tab, you have to, just on the other tab, see 526030.
Okay, what I should try?
Just do the your public address. I think you already have it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try this. Enter it again.
Okay, sir.
Cool. You working?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. No problem. Awesome. So good. Now I want you all to do this lab 2 and update the sheet and tell me on WhatsApp. I think we are all good now for this session. I'm going to close it, and I'm looking forward from you all to just bring the next assignment. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.